Office politics can destroy careers. But sometimes the destroyed career isn't the one you'd expect. My name is Paul Mitchell, and I learned this lesson the hard way when I watched 15 years of dedication crumble in a single meeting. What I discovered next would change everything, not just for me, but for everyone involved in the conspiracy that cost me my career. The signs were there from the beginning, but I was too focused on my work to see them clearly. I'd been the regional operations manager at Meridian Financial for over a decade, working my way up from junior analyst through sheer determination and late nights. At 41, I thought I'd finally earned my shot at the VP position that had opened up. My track record spoke for itself. 3 consecutive years of exceeding targets, a team that respected me, and clients who specifically requested to work with my department. Then, Jessica arrived. She walked into our office on a Tuesday morning in March, introduced as our new senior analyst. Something felt off immediately. Her resume looked impressive on paper, but anyone with real industry experience could see the gaps. When she couldn't explain basic financial terminology in our first team meeting, I assumed she was just nervous. When she submitted reports with fundamental errors that would embarrass a first-year intern, I figured she needed more training. But Robert Harrison, our department head, saw something else entirely. Within weeks, Jessica was getting assignments that should have gone to analysts with years more experience. When she fumbled presentations that could have cost us major clients, Robert would smooth things over with remarks about her fresh perspective and innovative approach. The rest of the team started exchanging glances during meetings, but nobody wanted to be the one to question management decisions openly. The breaking point came during the VP selection process. I'd spent months preparing my presentation, outlining expansion strategies that could increase our regional revenue by 30%. I knew every number, every projection, every potential obstacle and solution. When I walked into that conference room, I felt more confident than I had in years. 20 minutes later, I walked out knowing my career at Meridian was over. They didn't even let me finish my presentation. Robert cut me off halfway through, thanking me for my interesting ideas before announcing that they'd decided to promote Jessica to the position instead. The room fell silent. Even the other executives looked confused. Jessica had been with the company for exactly 2 months. The official reason they gave was that they wanted fresh blood in leadership positions. The real reason became clear 3 days later when I saw Robert's BMW parked outside Jessica's apartment complex at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday night. Everything suddenly made sense. The closed-door meetings, the way Robert's demeanor changed whenever Jessica was around, the impossible promotions and protection from consequences. I'd been watching a classic case of workplace favoritism, but it went deeper than I initially realized. That's when I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. Robert had always been particular about expense reports, but lately he'd been handling certain accounts personally. There were consulting fees being paid to companies I'd never heard of, travel expenses that didn't match any business trips I knew about, and equipment purchases that never seemed to arrive in our office. I spent the next 2 weeks documenting everything I could access. As operations manager, I still had clearance for most financial systems, at least until my official termination date, What I found made my own firing seem like a minor inconvenience compared to what was really happening. Robert wasn't just having an affair with Jessica. He was embezzling company funds to finance their relationship. The consulting fees were going to a shell company Jessica had set up. The travel expenses were covering their weekend getaways to expensive resorts. The equipment purchases were actually jewelry and luxury goods being delivered to Jessica's address. Over the past 6 months, Robert had siphoned nearly $200,000 from Meridian's accounts. But that wasn't the worst part. When I dug deeper into Jessica's background, I discovered she wasn't just an unqualified hire, she was actively involved in the scheme. Her previous job had ended abruptly when financial irregularities were discovered. Though no charges were filed, she'd targeted Robert deliberately, using their affair as cover for a sophisticated embezzlement operation. They'd fired me because I was getting too close to noticing the discrepancies. For the first time since my termination, I smiled. They'd made a critical mistake by keeping me around long enough to access the evidence they thought they'd hidden so well. I didn't go to Robert first. I didn't confront Jessica. I went straight to the FBI's white-collar crime division with a folder containing 6 months of financial records, email communications, and bank statements that painted a clear picture of corporate fraud. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, federal agents were conducting interviews at Meridian's offices. Robert tried to maintain his innocence, claiming the discrepancies were accounting errors that he was already investigating. Jessica attempted to distance herself from the financial irregularities, insisting she was just following Robert's instructions as her supervisor. Their stories fell apart when agents found evidence of their personal relationship and the shell company transactions. The day they arrested Robert, I was sitting in a coffee shop across the street from Meridian's building. I watched through the window as FBI agents escorted him out in handcuffs, while news cameras captured every moment. His wife arrived at the office 20 minutes later, learning about his affair and criminal charges simultaneously from a reporter's questions. Jessica's arrest came 3 days later. The shell company trail led directly back to her, along with evidence that she'd been running similar schemes at her previous job. Her sudden departure hadn't been due to downsizing. She'd been forced to resign to avoid prosecution, only to find a new target in Robert. The fallout was swift and comprehensive. Robert's confession implicated Jessica as a co-conspirator rather than a victim. He received 8 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. Jessica got 6 years and was ordered to pay full restitution to both Meridian and her previous employer, who reopened their investigation based on the FBI's findings. Meridian's board of directors offered me Robert's position, along with a formal apology and a settlement that more than compensated for my wrongful termination. But by then, I'd already accepted a better offer from Meridian's biggest competitor, who'd been impressed by my role in exposing the fraud. The best part came 6 months later, when I learned that Jessica's arrest had triggered investigations at 3 other companies, where she'd worked briefly over the past 5 years. The FBI discovered she'd been running similar schemes for nearly a decade, always targeting middle-aged executives in positions to manipulate company finances. Robert's wife divorced him while he was awaiting sentencing, taking their house, their savings, and custody of their 2 children. His career in finance was over permanently. no bonding. Company would ever cover him again, making him unemployable in any position involving financial responsibility. Jessica's professional reputation was destroyed across the entire industry. Her conviction made it impossible for her to work in finance, accounting, or any position requiring financial trust. Last I heard, she was working retail while trying to pay off the restitution orders that would follow her for the rest of her life. As for me, my new position came with a 40% salary increase, better benefits, and the respect of colleagues who knew the full story of how I'd exposed one of the biggest corporate fraud cases in our city's recent history. Sometimes losing a job is actually winning your life back. Sometimes the people who try to destroy your career end up destroying their own instead. And sometimes the best revenge is simply letting the truth do all the work for you. The day I started my new job, I received a handwritten note from one of my former colleagues at Meridian. It simply said, "Thank you for showing us that good people still win sometimes." I kept that note on my desk as a reminder that integrity doesn't just protect you from becoming the villain in someone else's story. Sometimes it makes you the hero in your own.